The AI revolution poses a radical new opportunity for us to harness technological ingenuity towards climate progress in mitigation and adaptation modelling and also weather forecasting. So let's check in now with climate and AI thought leaders to analyse what this is, a true inflection point in innovation. Please welcome to the stage Emily Shuckburgh, Director, Cambridge Zero, and also Sims Witherspoon, Climate Action Lead at Google DeepMind. Good afternoon, and well, good afternoon, good morning. I'm wishing the day away. Come up, ladies. We can see by the audience that this is going to be a very popular session. So Emily, let's start off with you, please. And looking back at this past year, for those that joined right at the beginning, we saw that video. There is so much climate crisis today. What is your view of where we are?
Well, we've seen a lot of the impacts of climate change play out over the last 12 months. We saw the wildfires in California just a month or so ago. We saw before that deadly flooding in Spain. We saw ridiculous wildfires across Europe with, again, deadly consequences in the summer. We saw extreme flooding in Pakistan happening repeatedly, etc., etc. And last year, on average, across the world, the temperatures were 1.55 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. So we really are at that absolute threshold of what we consider to be dangerous climate change. And as climate scientists, we're increasingly concerned about the risk that we are now likely to pass tipping points in the climate system.
So would you say we are at the tipping point, or are we over it? Is it too late?
Well, in some examples, we are past the tipping point. We are seeing the extinction of species, for example, not only as a consequence of climate change, but as a consequence of a range of environmental threats. And that is in itself a tipping point. But the tipping points that as climate scientists we're particularly concerned about are aspects like the vast ice sheets covering Greenland and West Antarctica, where there are concerns that we may already have passed tipping points in terms of the integrity of those ice sheets, and therefore on course to meters of sea level rise as a consequence. We're worried about the state of the Amazon rainforest. We're worried about the state of the methane that's currently stored in the frozen land in the Arctic. So there are a whole range of different potential tipping points in the climate system that could be catastrophic, and we're perilously close to passing those tipping points.
Sims, let's get your view of this. What does the science tell us? Perilously close or too late?
Well, I focus on the applied side of science. So Emily is a climate scientist, whereas I'm an applied AI climate scientist. So I wouldn't be working in the role I have if I thought it was too late. And if we focus on the solutions, I think one of the opportunities, or few of the opportunities that AI give us is to understand the challenges we face, so understand the science, understand the problems that are driving anthropogenic climate change. Things like being able to better predict the weather or have more accurate climate models. AI can also help us optimize current systems and infrastructure. We can't just start over from scratch today, because life depends on the systems that we use day in, day out. And AI has a particular opportunity there because it's a software-only solution, so we can put it on top of existing hardware while we build more innovative, environmentally friendly solutions for tomorrow. And in addition to understanding and optimizing, I also like to think of accelerate as being kind of the last part of a three-part framework of how AI can help us in this space, where accelerating the breakthroughs that we need for tomorrow's more sustainable technology, such as understanding how plasma works in a fusion reactor. We've used AI to do that. And understanding plasma physics is one of the key components on the route to a nearly inexhaustible supply of carbon-free energy, being fusion. So for us, the science and AI tells us that it's not too late.
Emily, picking up on the AI data insights, as co-director of UKRI, what further insights can you kind of share with us that AI has given you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working on the use of AI in the climate area for a decade or so in an academic context. And whereas climate science, as I just described to you, is often an incredibly depressing area to be working in, that intersection between climate science and AI is incredibly exciting. There have been huge revolutions that have been happening, particularly over the last couple of years. So our ability to use AI to forecast extreme weather events has completely been transformed just in the last couple of months. Our ability to be able to improve our forecasts of future climate by incorporating more data using AI into those climate forecasts has also been completely transformed. Our ability to be able to then not just predict meteorological conditions into the future, but really to be able to understand what the impact of those are. Students of mine have been working on looking at predicting future deadly heat waves or future impactful flood risk. So those downstream impacts that then enable us as a society to understand how we can build resilience to those climate impacts that are already happening today and are only going to get worse into the future. And then, as Sim said, we're working significantly in terms of using AI to enable climate solutions, whether that's in terms of using AI to better manage our energy system. We saw just overnight how important that balancing of our energy networks is in terms of what's been happening in Spain and Portugal, but also how we can better operate and more efficiently our wind farms or our solar energy output through forecasting. And then how we can use AI to support decarbonised mobility or decarbonised infrastructure, how we can use AI to help support developments in key clean technologies. Battery technologies, for example, is another area where we're using AI to help speed up the innovation process itself. So it's incredibly, this is the exciting bit, it's incredibly exciting, and we're literally, in an academic context, we're seeing new developments on not just a month-by-month basis, but a day-by-day basis. And then what's exciting about this event is where that then gets translated through into real-world solutions. So when you asked earlier, is it too late? This is the element of hope that it's not too late.
I can see how it's transformed your life and your research. Sim, can you build on that a little bit and talk a bit about how AI can be fully utilised going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think full utility of AI depends on people being really ready to use it, whether that's individual teams, academic settings, governments, institutions, and I think that if I think about full utility, I think about, okay, what is the call to action? How can people prepare to work with machine learning experts, AI practitioners? And I would say there are really three things that will help us get to full utility. One of them is for individuals and organizations and governments to clearly define problem statements. What are the challenges that they want to solve using artificial intelligence? And although this sounds like a very obvious first step, what is the problem statement? What is it that you want to try to solve with AI? Actually, when people start looking at this and start trying to define their problem statement, sometimes you realize that AI actually isn't the solution that you need in the first place. Sometimes a simpler solution or a different solution is actually where you need to go. So defining the problem statement is the first step. The second step, I would say, is looking at, and actually to add that, even better if you can get someone on your team who can help you translate that problem statement into mathematical language that algorithms understand, you'll be eons ahead. The second piece would be data. I mean, I cannot stress this enough. Data. If there's one thing you leave with thinking about today, is go clean your data, standardize it, get it formatted, make sure it's unbiased, make sure it's representative of the problem. You look at that problem statement and you need to make sure that you have the data required to actually solve it. I can't tell you the number of times we've gone to work with partners and they say, okay, here's what we want to solve and here's the mathematical formulation that you can use with the algorithms, and we look across the data sets that are needed, and actually some of them they haven't even been recording. so there's no history of it, there, let alone being, trended, archived. And so for us, AI tools are only as good as the data you put into them. And so if you don't have that data at the beginning, you're going to have to wait. I've said to partners before, wow, we've got, okay, you need to start collecting that data now, and then we can start working with you in maybe like 6 months, sometimes a year, depending on the problem. So look at your problem statement, make sure you have all the data needed to solve it. And then the third thing is benchmarks. Make sure you understand and are, making clear to AI practitioners what are the benchmarks? What is our target goal for AI performance? How much better do we need to be than your current state of the art for you to invest in these tools, for you to get excited about these tools? And I'll let you in on like a little secret of our world too. If you put out there, whether it's in a Kaggle competition or in a government-funded project, those 3 things, a problem statement, the data sets needed to solve it, and benchmarks, you will get an entire community of very competitive machine learning researchers and practitioners who line up to solve your problem. We honestly can't help ourselves. And if you throw in a leaderboard in there, that's even better. So I think to get to full utility, the real question is how we help people get ready to use AI, because there's so many areas of the climate crisis that we can deploy these tools. So.
Emily, is it too much to say then that AI is transformative for the climate challenges ahead, or critical?
So I think it really is the case that AI is going to be transformative in many aspects of climate-related solutions. I absolutely agree with what Sim's just been saying about your AI models are only as good as the data underneath it. There is a really important ethics question associated with that, though.
Yeah.
So because your AI models are only as good as the data underneath them, understanding where you get that data from and the ethics associated with that is critically important. So if we're looking at climate-related solutions in the developing world, for example, then ensuring that we have equality and fairness in terms of the way in which that AI model is being generated, the data that's underlying it, is critically important. If we're talking in this country about use of AI in terms of public services, and that could be in terms of some of the things that I was talking about in terms of our infrastructure or in terms of mobility solutions, then again, ensuring that as part of that process of developing AI-enabled solutions, we have a loop in there that ensures that fairness and equality is baked into the AI models themselves. So you've got a kind of human in the loop element that is critically important to ensure that we're not through the use of AI exacerbating underlying inequalities.
There's a lot of agreement between you, Sims. You're clearly nodding with that. AI comes with a lot of warnings, doesn't it? How can you ensure that it is used responsibly and that it is baked in, that ethical question that Emily's highlighted?
I think it's important with any technology, especially one as powerful as AI, for there always to be a constant evaluation of the risks and the rewards. The benefits need to always vastly outweigh the risks of using the technology. So for us, we have an entire team dedicated to responsibility, the ethics around data collection and what's in that data, as Emily mentioned. Also, to look at electricity usage of AI. This is a really big question, especially when you're talking about sustainability. How do we ensure that AI tools do more good than harm? And that is part of the responsibility conversation. I think to kind of narrow in on that point, because I see a couple of people nodding around the electricity point, I would say that, yes, AI is an electricity-intensive technology. It is. There's no shying away from that, right? And so the first thing we need to do is measure and make sure that we're aware of just how much electricity our models are using. Also, the carbon intensity values of that electricity. It's not every grid is created equal, and not every hour of energy used is the same in that way. So making sure we're measuring and analyzing. And then also, in addition to making responsible choices about where to use AI and where not to, when to run our models and when to maybe wait for more renewables to be on a grid, we also need to make sure we're optimizing where we do feel the benefits far outweigh the risks. We still need to be responsible there. And I think that in the world of AI, that comes in kind of 3 opportunity levels. The first is to look at the hardware you're using. We have models that compare. So GenCast is a weather forecasting probabilistic ensemble model that we created, and it takes 8 minutes to run 50 forecasts on a single TPU. So that's a single processor. Now, the current state-of-the-art used by most meteorologists, ECMWS, ENS system, takes hours on supercomputers with tens of thousands of processors. So the first is there's a way to optimize AI so that you're using the most efficient hardware and you're doing it as resource efficiently as possible, 1 TPU versus tens of thousands. There's also looking at ways to optimize the compute itself. So at Google, there is a model that basically any job that is not critical to infrastructure gets kind of scooped up and put in a queue to run when the grids are the most green. So it can change space and time to get that compute to run on greener grids. And then the last bit, in addition to hardware and compute, would also be making sure that we're looking at the full life cycle here, right? And so if we look at the grid itself, can we use AI to help decarbonize the grid so that the electricity question is, our focus actually on environmental impact shifts to the mined materials, responsible for technology production, but and away from the electricity problem, taking that bite out of that. And that's what my team at DeepMind is currently working on, is the optimization of electricity grids using AI and helping bring more clean energy onto them.
Okay, a lot to unpick there. Emily, I would like to just pick up on one of Sim's points there, which is that AI takes a huge amount of energy to power. There's delicate balance there to strike, isn't there? And how do you know which side of that you're on?
So in the community that's using AI in the climate context, then rather unsurprisingly, the energy consumption of the AI process itself is something that we think very carefully about. And in the way that Sims has been describing, we look to design the models that we're using in a way that is as unenergy intensive as possible. That said, I am deeply concerned about the hubris in much of the AI community that ignores the energy consumption, and there is a very, very real problem emerging. It's already the case that AI and data centers consumes, single-digit percentages globally of electricity, and that's growing substantially. If that continues into the future, we have a major problem. So it's an area that is thought about and discussed very much in terms of the climate context, but I don't see that beyond, and we really need to address that.
We're edging towards the end of our time together. I would love to hear both of your thoughts, though, on this conversation set in the context of the deadline, 5 years' time, 2030. Does AI offer new hope? Does it give us the chance to meet the targets that we've set ourselves, Sim?
Yeah, so I think that, the 2030 targets are extremely ambitious, and they are going to be very hard to hit. I don't think any of us would be working in this field if we didn't believe that at least some of them were achievable. To the point around responsibility, I think that, AI can be a transformative tool for impact, positive impact, but we need to be responsible in how we wield it and make sure that like we've been talking about, the benefits outweigh the risks. So do I think that it is a point of optimism? Yes, absolutely. I wouldn't be working in this space if I didn't. Do I think that the responsibility question is critical to that discussion? Absolutely.
Emily?
So I think, AI is one example of where new innovations really have the potential to be transformative in terms of our climate solutions. But we started off this conversation talking about where the current state of the climate is. And I think that those two things really need to come together, both the problem side and the solution side. And we really need to elevate both in terms of our dialogue. We've got an election coming up in the next couple of days, local elections in the UK. And one of the candidates in my local region came round at the weekend to my house and door stopping me. And, they always ask you what topics concern you most. And so I mentioned climate change. And he said, oh, climate change. It's gone off the boil a bit recently, hasn't it? Well, you can imagine what my reaction to that was. And so I feel that it's really important that, actually everyone in the room here today who believes that climate change is not a topic that has gone off the boil is really vocal in articulating that far from that, we're currently experiencing a planet that is on fire, and we're also in the midst of an innovation community that is also in its own way on fire. You just see that here today, whether that's in terms of AI or the multitude of other technologies that are sat outside in the room beyond us. Those are the two key messages that I think need to be elevated. The planet's on fire, but the innovation community is also on fire.
And Sim, just to add to that, no doubt you agree, but what support is needed from governments, from the global investment community to fast track this, to make sure that this topic does not go off the boil and it's front and center of everyone's mind, because time is running out?
Yeah, I think that as far as the AI element of the innovation solutions here, I would encourage governments to kind of take that call to action, that series of 3 that I mentioned earlier, which is, if you want to empower any organization or team to work with AI and solve climate challenges, or really any challenge, you need to encourage them to define their problem statements, even better if it's in mathematical language algorithms understand. You need to encourage them to ensure they have all the data necessary to solve those challenges, and that data is clean, unbiased, ethically sourced, as Emily mentioned earlier, and that you have benchmarks so that the AI community or the practitioners that you're working with understand how much better that tooling needs to be than the current state of the art to make it attractive. So I think any government, funding mechanism or, target group that can help with any of those, let alone all of them, would be a way to unlock and supercharge the potential here.
So a clear call to action for government, but what about our audience today? What would you like them to do at the end of this 2-day meeting?
The audience today, it matches the same. Understand the problems that you face and try to clearly articulate the problem statement. I honestly cannot say that enough. And also getting your data in shape. If you have those two things done, you are heads above, just exponentially more prepared to work with AI than the vast majority of the partners that we've engaged with in the past. You wouldn't believe how much legwork is actually required to work with AI. It is not a plug-and-play technology. And so getting yourself ready to work with it is the best possible thing you can do walking out of here today, AI readiness.
Would you agree with that, Emily? Get your data in order?
Data is critically important, but I think that it's as much about dreaming where you want to be in terms of the vision of the future, understanding what that end point is, and then understanding where solutions can be generated, and AI will be part of those solutions. That's a very clear trajectory that we are on. It's not the only element, but it's a critical enabler that can accelerate solutions.
Well, thank you very much indeed to Emily and Sim for speaking with so much enthusiasm about AI and helping to set our agenda today. Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you.